Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my shop. Welcome to my channel. My name is Keith and I'm your host. Before we get started, class, how about the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Peace! Amen.
All right, we're catching up on the fuel tank project again in front of the camera. And some of our video, like when we were brazing up for the Taco Bell, you could see one of the tanks up on the table with the center baffle already tacked up and it freestanding, and that's what we did. We started with the center run of the baffle, then we came in with the side baffles in the center, then we added both sides to the tank, and just yesterday we put the two ends on. We actually were working up on the 6-foot ladder, and of course I got some practice stuff here, but we had our foot pedal on this while we were standing on the 6-foot ladder so that we could be with these things down on the ground. They're that tall, so that I could heliarc the ends on. Anyhow, I got each of these tanks set up on the lift here so that I could raise it up and I could get comfortable. I don't have to bend over for none of this welding. We also brought in our spoolmatic, and I've got this set up, hence all the practice welding over there before we actually got to the tank. And I've got some really nice fillet welds coming out of this gun right now, and I'm real happy. And just as we get rolling, my bestie calls and he's glassing in the surge tubes that go on the outside. This is the port tank, this is the outboard side, this is the starboard tank, the outboard side. The surge tube runs alongside of here. And then in between the tanks, we're actually going to have a modernized storage area for fish, ice, and other things like that as well. And room to continue on with that project without modifying it. We've come into a tight scenario, and we're going to create ourselves a little bit more room. So the surge tube actually is about right there, center of the surge tube, and we need to have 3/4 of an inch more clearance from the back side of the tank. So we're going to take and we're going to cut loose my tack welds, and this is, I'm glad it's at this point here because we don't have it fully welded. I mean, I do have substantial tacks there, at least 1 inch TIG welded tacks, but it's a good fit and everything is new. So I'm going to get in here and I'm going to grind loose there. I'm going to spare you the listening to the grinder in here, and I might even put a couple plugs in myself. Once this thing is hollow and you're actually sticking your head in here and grinding at it, it's a little bit loud. So I'm going to clean and get each of these top sections off of here, and then I'm going to go through and we're going to cut this with the jigsaw and skill saw, whichever comes in comfortable. And we're going to give that we're going to leave that lower edge exactly where it's at, and we're going to bring in the top. So it's going to be a wedge shape that will be about like that. 1 inch down here to nothing. After we tack those back on, then we're going to get back to fully welding up the baffles and then all of our inside welds, and then we'll be flipping the tank upside down. We'll probably put one at a time upside down on the lift, and then we're going to heliarc the finished welding on the outside of the tank. Then we'll be able to lay the tank upright And we're going to be dressing off all of the baffle tops and the top of the tank there so that we'll get ready to lay the full sheet on there. And then we have some added supports that we're going to add in here that's going to make welding the top down to keep areas here like the old tank was. It was welded in on the knife edge, and I don't really care for that method there. I have another method I'm going to incorporate with how I put the top on it. We also ordered fill cap, and I got tank flanges coming in because we're going to be running pickup tubes, and we'll be placing those on there. And we may or may not actually put a some kind of a cup or register around the bottom of the tank so that we have a support for the bottom of the surge tube. We'll see. We're not really that deep that it should be that problem on this diameter that we're going to be carrying. All right, let's get to it. We've already changed this one over here, and we had pretty good success. Now this piece was just a skosh shorter from coming up here because we changed the angle on it. There's nothing we can do about that. We'll fade in that last 1/8 of an inch on our baffles, and we'll just, we'll just live with it. All right. Very first thing we did was grind our welds here, break that loose, break loose our baffles. Now we're coming up here and we're going to take these welds here and we're just going to groove the weld. And so we just we set our saw at our minimum here, and that minimum actually puts just a little tiny bit of a groove down in there and lets us fold this open and break it loose from this without grinding this whole edge right here. All right, and we just come down and just hit each of those welds. All right, I see a FedEx truck out here. Yeah, it's crazy. Everybody's ordering on the internet there this year because of the COVID, and I just got something that should have been here yesterday, and he's telling us he's actually going to have to work tomorrow. All right, I came over here and I got the last 3 over here, and I think pretty much we can bend this up. Alright, now we broke it off, and now we'll just dress sand these with a nice clean flapper wheel and prep this, and then we'll cut our angles on these 4 pieces just like we did there. Now we did learn something on this one here. The amount to get 3/4 inch here, we had to take 1 1/4 inch out here. So a little bit more is better, because we'd rather sacrifice it on the surge tube side than the other side where we're going to have a custom tank that's going to be made, and I can't wait. We really want that tank to be everything that it's going to be. All right, let me get this on. I got to clear off a couple work areas here, and we'll start prepping this up. We're marking all of these 1.25 inches down, and from that point right there to there, that's our cut. All right. Now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to get a new battery for our saber saw, and we just come along here and we keep it lubed up with the aluminum tap. Here we go. All right, and then after that, we dress that right to that blue line with the sander, and of course that just gets a fillet weld on there. But even so, the two center ones were more critical about that. Each one of them will have a wedge like this cut off. All right, we're going to blow her down and wipe her off with the acetone, and we'll be ready to start fitting that plate back on here. You got a hot tack and you want that plate to go down, you can tack it, tap it down, and then you know that you're down hard on this rib right here. Okay, I can see this flexing, so you have a little bit of room to play. All right, now we got to come over a little bit. We're going to hit this rib. I say rib, I mean baffle. All right. All right, now we can work these two in between here. We cleaned them with a wire wheel already. We start in the center and we start along this narrow seam here because this is, we need to hold this in. If we were to start over there at the edge or whatever and work, it's just not. This is almost like laying tile or whatever. You start square in the middle of the room and you work your way out to the walls. All right. Now we're going to probably put a clamp on here. Pull this in a little bit so we can get this one. We'll work our way to the corner. We'll do the same thing at that end. All right, that looks good. We'll bring over some weight here. I like that. All right, we're going to weld it and then tap it down. something looks like it moved, it probably has. And go double check. And we're looking at that other end over there, so. This is sticking up, so we're gonna put a quick tack on there and tap that on down. Okay, now we can pull off this and we'll be able to fit that with no issue. We're going to go back at that end, play with that end. I've got to get done the length of rod here. Here we go. Okay, we're picking up all of our stuff. We've completed the modification that was needed to have a better fit in between the surge tubes, and the center aisle between the tanks is going to be a tank itself, but it's going to be for ice cooler and that kind of thing. So we're going to get this up on the lift here, and we'll go back to playing with our spoolmatic and welding in the internal baffles. We've come in quite a ways with our tanks. And I didn't bring you along on a bunch of the welding, and I was able to flow along without worrying about cameras, microphones, and all of that. But I did carry along photographs, and I took photographs, and I do have a couple things along the way that actually showed you how we went about putting the tanks together. For welding up the inside, I actually had one on that set of pot pads for the lift over there, and the other on this side here, facing each other, so that I could work from one and then turn around and work the other, and then I could raise it up to get the lower section, lower it down to get the top section, and I never bent over to do the welding. The inside of the tank is completely welded with a spoolmatic, and the outside is completely TIG welded. I did find that, and I've been aggravated for a while, because I was having good TIG welding, but it wasn't the quality I know I can do. And then I changed out my bottles, and the argon had a contaminated bottle. Now, I didn't notice it into my desiccant. You know, desiccant shows moisture and stuff like that. So this contamination was not a moisture type of contamination, but it still gave us, the lower the bottle got, the worse it got. And at the end there, I was really starting to show a yellow yolk stain on the side of the welds. And so I changed out the bottles, and then all of a sudden, bam, there you go. You're welding like you know you can. And so anyway, we put in the center baffle, then we work the side baffles, and everything is just tacked into place. You don't want to get carried away and start welding before you got the complete shell done, because just welding the baffles without them tied into the side plates, the side walls, and them tacked to the base, and the whole bit, you're going to have warpage that's just not going to be controllable. You're going to fight yourself all the way to the end. So we went ahead and welded the tanks inside and out, meaning the bottom and the sides all the way around with the baffles complete. Then we came in with straight edges here, and we cut, this is just 1x1 angles. And I did 2 end welds and 1 nice weld down here at the bottom. And we put these in the center locations that we want into this. This is what's going to hold the inner section of the top cover on here. We're going to rosette weld, so we're going to cut slots that will be lining up with each one of these right here on the top. And then we'll have the full weld seam around there, and we'll have the rosette welds in on here. The same thing with that tank there is just a cross like this in the middle of the tank. And the port tank is done just like the starboard tank here. These were set with straight edges, and at that time we took all the the baffles that were higher than the edge around here. We brought those down, and every one of these is trammed out to be in line with there so that our plate lays completely flat on here. There was a couple that were a little bit lower, like this is 1/8 of an inch lower than that outside edge. But we set this to be proud of this, so we would still have that equal support. This is added on here because you can't 100%, and by cutting those old tanks loose, we know that they tried to weld directly on the top of this, and they had some funky welds in there, and we know that they were trying to jump gaps on a side here or there, and they were putting more weld than needed to be put in there because they had to fill more gap. And also too, when things get away from you, they get away from you. And so we're hoping to have nice slender rosette welds, and if we're slightly off on this, it's not going to matter because we have the angle that's going to be underneath. We're going to have 100% surface under our rosette weld. And so it's a little bit of work to put these in, but it makes the end job a lot faster, a lot quicker, a lot more comfortable, less stress. Less stress sometimes is better than being the fastest. All right. I think we're pretty well caught up with how we progressed along to get to this point. Let's go over here because I want to cover the accessories to the top of the tank lid that we need to take care of before we actually weld the tops down onto here. These are a few of the items that we need to confirm locations and complete before we can actually set this top and weld the top to the tank. And this is our fill cap. Now, this fill cap is pretty nice. It's got a nice thread, it's got a flange. You could just weld that to the top of the tank. This screws down. It has an O-ring in here. Nice feel to it. It's anodized on the lid here. A very, very nice fill cap. But what we decided to do is create a moat for spillage. Accidental spillage or just an overfill real quick or whatever circumstances cause you to dribble your nozzle outside the hole here. All right, so this is sloped slightly, about 300 thousandths from center to out here. This lip here, we haven't finished machining these. Well, we're going to go into the closing and we're going to take a look at that in a minute here. There's going to be a raised moat that will be the height of the male protruding up of this fitting here out, and then there'll be a drain tube in here. So we got to machine it for a lip that's going to stand up and prep it around this outside edge so we get a nice weld seam around here. And then we're going to decide if we're going to give it flip this plate over and give it a weld on the inside around here as well. We want it to be flat, and we want to hold the tank without warping it too much. So we're going to be playing around with how we're going to actually secure this to the top. We're not just going to cut open a big 10-inch hole right here and then wall it in there like that. We're going to give it some proper thought so that we secure that this will have an anti-leaking situation. Okay, so our fuel moats, we'll cover that here shortly inside. The next thing that we actually have is we have 3 fittings that we need to have in here, and we add those to the tank by using tank flanges. These are 3/4 pipe thread. This is 1/2-inch pipe thread. The 1/2-inch pipe thread is just going to be an atmospheric vent to the tank. That lets it free flow without any pressures caused by the return pressure or the suction pressure or the temperature of the fuel. The other 2 fittings that we're going to put in here, and one is going to be a pickup for the fuel, and one's going to be a return for the fuel. The pickup is going to be 5/8 aluminum tube. We're going to bore this out, cut the tube to the right depth and length. It'll get welded on here, and then it will screw down into here, go down to the bottom of the tank, and then we're going to have a piece of channel or bent flat stock with a hole in it to help support the bottom of the tube from any fuel pressure that might be occurring during any rough sea ride. The other fitting here is going to be for the return. Now the fuel is going to be in one area and the return is going to be in another area. And the return is basically returned down below fluid levels, basically so that it doesn't aerate the fuel. And also, too, the fuel coming back is a little warmer than the fuel going out. Having it come down to the bottom of the tank ensures that no matter how level or how much fuel you got in the tank, it's still not aerating at that level there. And that's the basics to what we have left to put on the lid before we weld the lid to the base of the tank. All right, let's go in and play with our troughs that we're building, or moats that we're building for the fill cap.